"Ethan, you're done here." The scream echoed through the workshop as Rick Miller, the shop owner, shoved a wrench off the table. Everyone froze. The young mechanic stood speechless, grease still on his hands. He didn't steal. He didn't fight. He just fixed a broken car. For free. The old woman had walked in crying, clutching a photo of her late husband, saying she couldn't afford the repair. Ethan couldn't turn her away. But that act of kindness just cost him his job. Rick's finger jabbed his chest. "You touch another unpaid job again, and you'll never work in this town." Ethan swallowed hard, guilt mixing with quiet pride. Outside, the same old woman sat in her car, watching everything through tears and dialing a number no one in that garage could imagine. Because she wasn't who she seemed. The shop floor smelled of oil and burnt rubber, the kind of air only a mechanic could breathe comfortably. Jake's hands were black with grease, his shirt damp with sweat, but his eyes stayed kind. Even after 12 straight hours, when the old lady pulled up in her rusted sedan, the other workers snickered. "Look at that tin can," one said. "She can't afford air, let alone a fix." Jake ignored them. The car coughed, sputtered, and finally died right in front of his bay. He walked over quietly, wiping his hands on a rag. "Ma'am, what's wrong with it?" She gave a small, embarrassed smile. "It won't start. I think it's finally given up on me." He opened the hood, listening as she explained how she'd been saving for weeks just to afford a simple oil change. That stopped him cold. Her voice trembled, not from anger, but from exhaustion. He didn't ask for money. He didn't check her wallet. He just got to work. While others clocked out, Jake stayed behind. The lights dimmed one by one as the night crew left, but he kept tightening bolts, replacing the spark plugs, flushing the oil. His knuckles bled when a wrench slipped, but he didn't stop. The old lady sat quietly in the corner, watching. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "Sometimes you just do what's right." By the time he turned the key, the engine purred like it hadn't in years. The woman gasped, tears filling her eyes. "How much do I owe you, son?" Jake shook his head. "Nothing. Just drive safe." She froze, clutching her purse. "Nothing?" He shrugged. "You needed help. That's enough payment for me." But fate wasn't impressed with kindness. The next morning, his boss, Mr. Crane, stormed through the garage with fury written across his face. "Jake, in my office." Now, Jake followed, wiping his hands nervously. He hadn't even sat down when the man exploded. "You think this is a charity?" Crane barked. "You fixed that junker for free. Do you have any idea what that costs us?" "I was just—" Jake started, but the older man slammed a hand on the desk. "You were just stealing from my business." The shop went silent. The other workers stared from the doorway. "Pack your tools," Crane snapped. "You're done here." Jake's breath hitched, fired. Just like that, the old woman's smile flashed in his memory, the way her eyes softened when the engine came back to life. He'd done the right thing, hadn't he? As he walked out, every step felt heavier. His world had just collapsed, all for a stranger he'd never see again. But what Jake didn't know was that the old woman wasn't just anyone, and her next call would change his life forever. Jake sat on the edge of his worn-out couch, staring at the eviction notice taped to the wall. His apartment was as tired as he was, peeling paint, flickering light, and a silence that pressed against his chest. He hadn't told his mom yet. She already worried too much. The phone on the table buzzed. Unknown number. He almost ignored it. But something, maybe desperation, made him answer. "Hello? Mr. Jake Turner?" A calm female voice asked. "Yeah, who's this?" "I represent a client who'd like to speak with you." She was very impressed by your work yesterday. Jake frowned. "You mean the lady with the old sedan?" "Yes," the woman said. "She'd like to meet you, personally." He hesitated. "Look, if this is about money, tell her not to worry. I don't need anything from her." "I think you might want to hear her out," the voice replied gently. She insisted. An address followed, an uptown location he'd only seen in magazines. When the call ended, Jake sat frozen. He didn't even have gas money to get there, but something about the woman's tone lingered. Steady, respectful, like she knew something he didn't doubt by noon. He was standing in front of a glass gate that looked like it belonged to another planet. A black uniformed guard checked his name, nodded, and opened it with a quiet click. The driveway stretched like a runway, leading to a mansion surrounded by manicured lawns and gleaming fountains. Jake's old pickup looked painfully out of place as he parked it near a line of luxury cars. The front door opened before he could knock. The same old woman from the garage stood there, except now she didn't look old. Her back was straight, her expression calm, her clothes far from modest. Diamonds shimmered softly around her neck. "Jake Turner?" she said with a warm smile. "I was hoping you'd come." He blinked, completely lost. "Ma'am, I didn't know. That I'm not as helpless as I looked?" She interrupted softly. "I know." That was the point. Jake's heart pounded. "You mean you—" "I wanted to see what kind of man would help without a reward," she said. "And I saw it in you." She motioned him inside. The house was a museum of success. Tall ceilings, portraits, quiet servants who nodded as they passed. "I'm Evelyn Ross," she said, turning toward him. "Owner of Ross Industries." Jake nearly stumbled. Ross Industries was the auto manufacturer, the company that built the very engines he fixed every day. "I owe you a debt," she continued. "But instead of paying you, I'd like to offer you something far better." He swallowed hard. "What's that?" She smiled faintly. "A job. Not as a mechanic, as a test." Jake frowned, unsure what she meant. Evelyn leaned closer. "You helped me when I was nobody. Now I want to see what you'll do when I give you everything." Jake felt the weight of her words settle over him like destiny, whispering a challenge. Evelyn's words echoed in Jake's mind like a riddle he couldn't solve. "You helped me when I was nobody. Now I want to see what you'll do when I give you everything." He followed her into a sleek office with tall glass walls overlooking the city. A faint hum of machines below hinted that the mansion wasn't just a home. It was connected to something bigger. "Sit," she said kindly. Jake obeyed. Still unsure what he was doing there. Evelyn slid a folder across the glass table. "Inside is the address of a small auto repair shop downtown. It's struggling, close to shutting down. I want you to run it for 30 days. Jake blinked. "Run it? Ma'am, I'm not a manager. I just fix cars." "Exactly," she said. "You care about people. You fix more than just engines. That's what this shop needs, someone with heart, not greed." He frowned, flipping through the papers. "What's the catch?" Her lips curved. "There's always a catch, isn't there?" She leaned back in her chair. "The owner of that shop doesn't know me. He believes he's working for an anonymous investor. You'll go there, help rebuild the place, and treat every customer like you treated me. That's all." Jake nodded slowly. "And if I fail?" Evelyn's smile faded into seriousness. "Then you'll walk away. No shame, no punishment. But if you succeed—" She paused. "I'll offer you a future you never imagined." His chest tightened. He didn't understand what she saw in him, but something about her calm certainty made him believe he was standing on the edge of something life-changing. The next morning, Jake stood outside the new shop, Dale's Auto Works. A dusty corner garage with cracked windows and a faded sign. Inside, a man in his 60s struggled to lift a tire onto a rack. Jake stepped forward. "Need a hand?" The old man looked up, wiping sweat from his brow. "You the new guy? The investor's mechanic?" Jake smiled faintly. "Guess that's me." Dale studied him for a moment, then chuckled. "Hope you know what you're doing. This place eats good men alive." By noon, Jake had rolled up his sleeves and gotten to work. The floor was cluttered, tools scattered, customers long gone. But he cleaned, repaired, and worked through the day like it was his own home. When Dale returned from lunch, he froze. The shop floor was spotless. 2 old cars that hadn't run in months now idled smoothly outside. "What did you do?" Dale asked. Stunned, Jake grinned. "Fix them. And maybe fix your shop a little too." Dale laughed, shaking his head. "You're different, kid." Jake shrugged, But deep down, he felt something shift. For the first time in a long while, he wasn't just surviving, he was building something. But what he didn't know was that Evelyn Ross was watching every move. And his real test had only just begun. 2 weeks later, Dale's Auto Works was unrecognizable. The floors gleamed with oil-free shine, the tools hung neatly on the walls, and the smell of burnt rubber had been replaced with the soft aroma of fresh coffee. Jake had turned the broken little garage into a place people actually wanted to visit. Word spread fast. Truckers, single moms, even a police officer or two started showing up, all whispering about the mechanic who didn't overcharge a dime. Jake refused tips, refused shortcuts. Every night, he worked until his hands ached and his eyes stung, but it felt right. It felt honest. Dale would just shake his head and mutter, "You're either the dumbest mechanic I've met or the best one left." But something darker was brewing. One Thursday afternoon, a man in a black suit and polished shoes walked into the garage. His expression was all corporate charm, but his eyes, cold, calculating, told another story. "Jake Miller?" he asked. "Yeah," Jake said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Can I help you?" The man smiled thinly. "Name's Carter. I represent Ross Industries. Heard you've been doing quite a job here." Jake froze for half a second. "Ross Industries? Evelyn Ross?" He forced a polite smile. "Just doing my work, sir." Carter glanced around, unimpressed. "You've been refusing upsells, giving discounts, fixing things for free. That's unusual behavior in a business." Jake frowned. "People come here because they trust me. I'm not going to charge for what's not broken." Carter stepped closer, lowering his voice. "That's the problem, Mr. Miller. This isn't a charity. Every minute you spend fixing without profit is money lost. You're not a hero. You're a liability." Dale, who'd been listening from the counter, bristled. "You don't talk to my mechanic like that." Carter ignored him. He reached into his briefcase, pulled out a sealed envelope, and tossed it on the workbench. "You're terminated. Effective immediately." Jake's chest tightened. "Terminated? For what? Doing my job." "For making the company look weak," Carter replied coldly. "Miss Ross doesn't tolerate inefficiency." Jake stared, stunned. Miss Ross, the same woman who told him to run this place with heart? Before he could speak, Carter added, "Pack up and leave. Now, security will follow." Jake stood frozen as the suited man turned and walked out, his polished shoes echoing across the concrete. For a long moment, the only sound was the faint hum of the garage lights. Dale slammed a wrench onto the counter. "They can't just toss you out like that." Jake swallowed hard, forcing his anger down. "It's fine, Dale. Maybe I was meant to get fired twice." He grabbed his jacket, dusted off his hands, and walked toward the door, heart heavy, jaw tight. Outside, the sun dipped low, bleeding gold across the street. He felt betrayed. Again. But what Jake didn't know was that this firing wasn't punishment. It was the final move in Evelyn Ross's quiet, deliberate plan, and what came next would change his life forever. Jake didn't sleep that night. He sat on the edge of his small apartment bed, staring at the letter of termination, its cold, typed words still burning in his mind. The world had a way of breaking the good ones twice, first with failure, then with falsehood. By morning, he'd made up his mind. He wasn't going to beg, but he was going to get answers. He drove straight to the Ross Industries headquarters, the kind of building that touched the clouds, all glass, steel, and silence. People in suits moved briskly through the marble lobby, but every pair of eyes turned as the grease-stained mechanic walked in. The receptionist hesitated. "Sir, do you have an appointment?" Jake's jaw tightened. "Tell Evelyn Ross that the mechanic she fired is here to say goodbye, properly." Within minutes, 2 security guards escorted him to the top floor. The elevator ride felt endless, but his pulse never wavered. When the doors opened, Evelyn was already standing by the window, sunlight tracing the edge of her silver hair. She didn't look surprised to see him. "I was wondering when you'd come," she said softly. Jake stepped forward, voice steady but low. "Why? Why fire me after everything I built for that shop? After you told me to do the right thing?" Evelyn turned, eyes calm, unreadable. Because I needed to see what you'd do when everything was taken from you again. Jake frowned. What are you talking about? She walked toward him, heels clicking sharply on the marble. When I met you at that gas station, I wasn't just an old lady with a broken car. I wanted to see what kind of man you were when no one was watching. And what I saw that day restored my faith. Jake blinked, caught between disbelief and confusion. So you tested me? Yes, she said, her tone softening. And you passed every test. Integrity, compassion, humility, the kind of values this company lost years ago. She motioned toward a folder on her desk. That letter you're holding isn't a termination notice. Look again. Jake hesitated, then unfolded the paper. The first line made his breath hitch. We are pleased to offer you the position of head of community operations, Ross Industries Foundation. He looked up, stunned. I don't understand. Evelyn smiled faintly. You've proven what money can't buy. Heart. I'm putting you in charge of rebuilding our outreach division. No suits, no games. Just people helping people. Starting with funding free auto repair programs for single mothers and veterans. Your idea, remember? Jake felt his throat tighten. You remembered that? I remember every good deed that doesn't ask to be seen, she said gently. For a moment, neither spoke. The city shimmered outside the glass, cold yet full of promise. Evelyn extended her hand. Welcome to the team, Mr. Miller. Jake shook it slowly, the weight of the moment grounding him. He smiled faintly. Guess fixing that old lady's car wasn't such a mistake after all. Evelyn's eyes softened. No, Jake, it was the day everything started working again. And with that, the man who was fired for kindness became the man who built a legacy out of it.